The Super Eagles did not fulfill their national mandate tonight. They lost to the, is it wild beasts or wildebeests of Central African Republic, a situation that analysts have described in so many unprintable words. So we'll be silent until towards the end of tonight's show. How can sport influence society? How powerful is sport really in the world? What does Africa need to do to use sport to end racial equality and all other injustices in the world? How can sport impact and change our society massively and positively? Tonight, for the duration of our session in Parliament, we have a very special international guest, and he shall be providing us with some of the answers. I am Segun Odegbami, Speaker of the Sports Parliament, taking our 60 million viewers on Africa's largest TV network, NTA, to new levels and dimensions in sports conversation. Sitting with me tonight are the Maverick himself, unhappy and sad, Onome Obrute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we get to that time, we will talk.
Well, we also have beauty in the house, Adenike Keenan. Adenike.
Mr. Speaker, I choose to smile against all odds, regardless of what happened earlier on in the day. We are Nigerians, so we push on. We move, like they say in the world now. So let's see. But I'm very excited about today's topic and looking forward to an interesting time and enlightening moments with our guest.
Very good. And we also have one who has run away for so long, but he's here tonight with us, Kunle Raji, Mr. Kantara. Kunle, how are you tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Speaker, Isaac. Particularly welcoming my boss, my mentor, albeit virtually.
Very good. Well, our special guest is in the house. He's an erudite scholar, prolific writer, human rights campaigner, expert in sports and social issues, anti-apartheid activist, among so many other international accomplishments. Dr. Richard LAPCHICK. Just say hello to us, Doctor.
Pleasure to be with you.
Fantastic. So, well, all the 50 minutes of tonight's show, or most of it, would be for our conversation. Join us after the break.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Richard grew up in a family where there was a strong tradition of doing the right thing. His father was an iconic figure. He signed Sweetwater Clifton to the Knicks, breaking the color barrier.
His recollections alone of being around his father growing up would fill a dinner table conversation with great tales of meeting Jackie Robinson when he was a kid, seeing what his father went through for fielding the first black player in Knick history.
Joe was someone who, as a coach, never let race get in the way of doing the right thing, and there's no question that that had a huge impact on Richard himself.
When I was 14, I was at a basketball camp with 5 other white guys. One of the white guys was hurling the N-word at the black guy day in and day out till I challenged him, and this guy knocked me out cold. But the black guy was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, then Lou Alcindor, and a lifelong friendship grew out of that.
Everything Richard has fought for has not been popular at the time. And he has been this courageous light that has said, this needs to be said, this needs to be heard, and I'm going to say it.
There's a fine line sometimes between being courageous and putting your life on the line. With progress comes pain, and that was a price that he was willing to pay.
When I was the American leader of the sports boycott of South Africa, I was actually attacked in my office in a college library by two masked men and had the N-word carved in my stomach.
Richard had very bravely spoken out against apartheid. There were risks involved. There were just a lot of bigots who didn't like what he had to say.
He was attacked for standing up and wanting to right a wrong. And to be brutally attacked as he was, to have the N-word carved with scissors into his stomach, he had to have been frightened beyond words. And a lesser person would have said, okay, that's it, I'm done. Not Rich. They who did that was the wrong person.
I've been involved in civil rights for the last 28 years of my life, but I can never, ever, ever know what it's like to be black. That's an instantaneous, every minute sentence that society has given to black communities and Hispanic communities in this country, that discrimination can take place at any time.
My dad taught me that a leader is somebody who stands up for justice and doesn't block its path. I've spent most of my adult life trying to help young people who live in crises that have become more profound as the generations have gone on.
You know, he's really been in the forefront in the whole bridge between sports and using that to achieve equality, not only here in the United States, but around the world.
He's been involved in civil rights and race issues for his entire life.
I automatically smile when I think of Richard. Wow. I smile and also a tear comes to my eyes. Whew. He's a good man. I thank him. I'm appreciative of the work that he has done. Thank you. Thank you, Richard LAPCHICK. Thank you for being you, and thank you for wanting this world to be a better place, and because of you, it is.
If you are just joining us, this is the Sports Parliament, and what you just saw there is a testimony to the greatness and humanity of Dr. Richard LAPCHICK. We have the greatest pleasure to welcome you once again to the Sports Parliament. You're welcome, sir.
It's an honor to be here, Mr. Speaker.
Fantastic. Well, this is a sports program, really. We know the scope of your activities as a human being transcend the area of sports. This is a sports program, so we'll be focusing on the sport aspect of some of your work. We know you are a scholar, an educator, a writer, anti-social campaigner, human rights activist. You founded the Center for the Study of Sports and Society, and so on and so forth. You interacted with Muhammad Ali, with Abdul Karim Jabbar, with Dr. Sam Ramzani, and so many others who were in the anti-apartheid campaign group. So on behalf of all of us, on behalf of all black people on earth, I'm saying thank you to a white man who has demonstrated to us what it means to be human. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for those kind words. I was lucky that I was born into a family where the issue of racism was part of the discussion at home. My dad was, as you saw in the video, a leader in the world of sport in terms of integrating it in America. And my sister, who's very close to me, moved to Africa in 1961, and I started reading about Africa and fell in love with the continent. And that's where the love affair actually started.
Wow. So now, sports and society. You know, how powerful is sport actually in your own experiences to change society? And how much change have you seen and experienced using sport as the vehicle?
Well, in my country, you know, one of the most famous people is Jackie Robinson, who was the black baseball player who in 1947 broke the color barrier in Major League Baseball. 7 years before, the courts ruled that integration had to be the law of the land. So sports led the way there. We've seen innumerable instances where sport has brought us out of a difficult period of time. We just had the 20th anniversary of September 11th in the United States, and lots of documentaries were done about it, and all of them talked about the fact that in that same month as the attack, the New York Yankees, our baseball team in New York City, and the New York Mets, the other baseball team in the city, both played games that made people feel like life might be able to resume as normal, and elevated the spirits. And there were so many examples of sport elevating those experiences, so many examples of sport leading the way. The image of probably the most famous image from the Olympic Games, from my point of view, is John Carlos and Tommy Smith on the victory stand in 1968 at the Mexico City Olympics, when they raised their fists in protest against racism in the United States as well as in South Africa. Muhammad Ali, of course, at the same time refusing to fight in Vietnam, but the price that athletes were willing to pay and did pay, standing up for justice in those days. Ali faced 5 years in prison. Carlos and Smith weren't able to get a job in the United States for the next 7 years. This was consistent for the next 40 or 50 years, but we've suddenly reached a plateau in the United States where there are literally armies of athlete activists now. I'm not sure if it was covered very much in Nigeria, but during the NBA playoffs in the bubble, the Milwaukee Bucks refused to come out onto the court in protest of a police shooting at a place called Kenosha, Wisconsin. And the NBA shut down within 2 hours. All the other sports shut down because the fact of racism was just too important to consider playing a game. But when the games resumed, the NBA and the other leagues put the issue of racism literally on the fields. Every NBA court had Black Lives Matter written on it. Same was true in the NFL and Major League Baseball. So sport, in the current situation, I think is at its all-time high in terms of the potential of athletes to lead the way for various social justice issues. This is the most integrated workplace we have in America, where there are more black participants in sport, in the major sports, than in any other area of our economy. And they're also very wealthy, earning the type of income they earn in professional sports. They have the ability to invest in social justice issues and use their resources to bring about change. So I think we've reached a point where we can be hopeful that that wave of athlete activism in the United States, and I think I see it happening globally, can have a tremendous impact on the individual societies where they play.
Beyond just people mouthing it, saying it, and doing what they did tonight. For example, somewhere in Europe, there was a football match between France and Belgium. And before the game started, they all knelt. That was condemning racism in the world. Those are just gestures. The world has really not changed. 400 years after, slavery came and, racism began and all of that, the world has really not changed. And yet Mandela stood on a platform and said sport has the power to change the world. You have just given us instances now as to how sport has affected life in the United States of America. We are looking at it globally. In Africa, for example, we can measure what sport has done beyond apartheid in South Africa that it helped to stop. How do you think can we go about making sports more powerful and more influential in this part of the world, in the third world countries particularly, so that it can start to achieve what America has achieved in the area of injustices and inequality, even though they haven't achieved much too, when you look at it?
I think that in the United States, athletes really weren't encouraged to be active until very recently, and we've seen, I think the sports world was afraid that the commercial value of their games would decrease. But in fact, public opinion polls now show that fans support athlete activism in the United States. They support the teams supporting that activism, and they support brands that take social justice issues as part of their culture of their company. This represents an enormous change, and I think if in Nigeria and other countries in Africa, the sports authorities highlight the fact that these athletes can do great things by standing up for justice, that will encourage them to take those bold actions, which seemingly might be risky at the time, but sometimes we have to take a risk to move ahead.
Fantastic. You had to actually set up a center or a department in a university, which was where I first met you, Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States of America. And that center was to study the relationship between sport and society. Why did you have to institutionalize your campaign? Why did you have to put it in an institution? And what's the result of that, your work in Northeastern University? Now you are in Florida, by the way, also doing more or less what you did in Northeastern. Tell us about those.
Well, after the attack that you saw in the video, I was asked to write a book about both the attack and about racism in America. And when the book came out, I included in it an analysis of how many black players there were playing our games and how few there were running our games, how few women were running our games. And Sports Illustrated, which was the major sports publication at the time, had a scathing book review of me like, why is this man bringing up problems that don't exist? Look at our playing fields. There are many black people on the playing fields. There were many black people on the playing fields. There are even more today, but there were hardly any black people running sports. So I decided that if Sports Illustrated could really say that I was going to start publishing studies that looked at specifically at the hiring practices of the individual and major professional sports as well as college sports and the sports media. We've been doing that since the 1980s. I think that the commissioners of all the leagues in the United States resented that I was doing that in the beginning, but now they all welcome the reports as a leverage that they can use with their clubs. I believe all of our commissioners want racial change, want gender hiring practices to change, but realize it's easier to do that at the league level than it is at the club level, where they don't really have control, but they definitely have influence. So they use the report cards to do that. And I think that is one of the reasons why continuing to publish these studies has become important for me personally to be involved with, but also to get those figures out in our public.
Wow. Parliamentarians are here. Onome is here. We're having this conversation. Do you have any questions? Do you have any remarks so far? Adenike, any one of you?
I think I should go.
Yeah, Denike.
Can I go first? Okay.
Yes.
Just looking at the video, and I'm sure a lot of us would agree that Mr. LAPCHICK, actually Dr. LAPCHICK, I think, to correct myself, really took a heavy stand. And like they say, heroes don't come often. And it must have been very rough. I'd just like to dig in and just like to know what it was like at the time, especially with the attack on you. What did you feel like? Because you're a human. As much as you'll be determined, you had loved ones who were concerned about you, and what was it like that still made you, or what propelled you to still go ahead regardless of all the attack and the condemnation and all of that at the time? That I just wanted to dig deep. You might just encourage somebody trying to make a change somehow.
To change the world. Encourage somebody to change the world. Yes, go ahead, Richard.
That night, lying in the hospital, I realized that if people had gone to the length they did to try to stop my father 28 years before, and the length they tried to go that night to stop me, that they must have thought that using the sports platform to address racism was an effective tool, and that's why they were trying to stop us. So I determined that night in the hospital that I would spend the rest of my life trying to use that sport platform to do that. And that night, deep into the night, I think that people in the hospital just assumed that I was either passed out or asleep. and I heard three women talking out in the corridor. I couldn't hear them or see them, and then eventually, thinking I was asleep, they came in one by one and leaned over and kissed my hand and went back outside, and I realized there were three black nurses. And when they got back out in the hall, I heard one say to the other two, I didn't think white people cared. I knew a lot of my white friends who really did care, and I felt that a special obligation as somebody who was white at that moment, that I might have that role to play in the years ahead. And what happened immediately after that, was even more frightening, and that was in the hospital for 3 days. We've read a lot about police brutality and police community relations since the murder of George Floyd in the United States. So I was in the hospital for 3 days, came out. There were about 25 friends and supporters that come to Virginia, where I was living at the time, to lend their support. And a supporter called up from Nashville, Tennessee, which is where the matches against South Africa were scheduled to take place. And he said that the afternoon newspaper in Nashville said the banner headline across the top, "LAPCHICK's wounds ruled self-inflicted." And it said the police said that I had self-inflicted these wounds. The people in our house was a neighbor who was an attorney. He said, we better go talk to the police. So the next day we did. The detective in charge of the investigation denied that they leaked it to the press, but obviously they had. And he said, listen, I believe the attack took place the way you said it did, but there are people on the force who don't. Why don't you take a lie detector test? So I said to him, as a student of the civil rights movement and a student of racial history, that I knew how the police used lie detectors against civil rights activists in the past, and it was unlikely that I would agree to take it. But I would call all of the leaders in the coalition that night, and if they thought I should take the lie detector for the good of what we were trying to accomplish, that I would do it. So that night I called them all, and they were all the major civil rights leaders in the country. They all said absolutely refused to take it. And the next day, a reporter from a local newspaper called up and said, we understand you've been asked to take a lie detector, what are you going to do? And I told them I wasn't going to take it. And I told them about speaking with these civil rights leaders and them all telling me not to. So the next day he ran the story in the newspaper, and in addition to the story of the police making those accusations and me refusing to take a lie detector, the thread that I didn't expect was he had a local medical examiner from Virginia being quoted as saying, I examined LAPCHICK in the hospital and all of his wounds are consistent with self-inflicted wounds. While I was in the hospital, they said, our police doctor wants to examine you. I didn't think anything of it. He came in and sat with me for an hour. He never looked at 1 inch of my body. He happened to be from India, and talked about how he was empathetic to what we were trying to accomplish in the anti-apartheid movement. But in the newspaper story, it said that he examined me thoroughly and that all of my wounds were self-inflicted. He literally never looked at my body. Wow. And medical examiners don't have a role with looking at living people. They only examine cadavers. So I decided to go back to Nashville to try to get the focus back on South Africa. When I got there, I realized nobody cared whether South Africa was coming. It was, did LAPCHICK do it? Didn't LAPCHICK do it? So I flew to Washington. I had a private FBI operative give me a lie detector test and flew to New York City. And had a civil rights medical examiner examine me, and we released the results of those 2 tests affirming that the attack had taken place the way I said it did at a press conference at the United Nations, and the UN was very supportive of my work at the time. And when I flew home to Virginia that night, after we made the announcement that I had taken the lie detector and had the medical examiner examine me, the rumor was that I was going to be arrested when we landed in Virginia. But when I got to Virginia, there were no police because they must have learned the results of the test. So I was offered a position at the United Nations as a result of all this. They were trying to, I think, rescue me out of the American South. Moved to New York City, and the next South African team that was coming was 1981. It was a rugby team on its way to New Zealand, where rugby is obviously much more popular than it is in the United States, but they had 3 matches scheduled in the U.S. We decided that we were going to form another coalition and get them canceled. So we met every Thursday night at the Church Center for the United Nations across the street from the UN. And anybody who wanted to follow my movements wouldn't know where I was because I was leading those meetings. On this particular night, I had purchased a used car from a friend at the UN and had driven it back up to our apartment on the Upper West Side. We had purchased a house in the country, and my family was staying there in the summer, and I decided I was going to drive up the next day in that car that I had bought that night. But when I got there, instead, my family decided to surprise me, and they were frantically running around the lobby. Somebody had broken into the apartment in New York City, looked at any of their things, had ransacked all of my things. The only thing they took was a book that I was writing about this particular period. The New York City police told my family to go back up to where the country house was, and I went back to the UN the next day, and this time under heavy armed guard. At 11 o'clock that morning, my wife at the time called me up and said, I'm okay, and I didn't know there was a chance she wouldn't be okay, going 65 miles an hour on the New York State Thruway. Thank God in the middle of the morning when there was no traffic, the car's engine seized up and she was able to wrestle it to the side of the road, bring herself and the children to safety. Somebody had tampered with the engine the night before.
Wow.
2 nights later, the local police found two men under the hood of the car we were trying to replace and chased them into Central Park.
Doctor, what an experience. People have
and
to.
Race became an integral part of my life.
Wow.
And my efforts, because we saw the effectiveness of fighting against racism on this platform.
Fantastic. I've read your book. I know you've written a couple of books, several books you have written, 17 titles, I think. And what you suffered is the norm with black people around the world. The black man is not, or the world is not designed so that the black man would succeed, so that the black man would have equality, so that the black man would have justice. And that's why in my country, Nigeria, Africa and the black race are the centerpiece of our foreign policy. And that's why the agency responsible for our foreign policy formulation, which is the Nigeria Institute of International Affairs, has just created a new department which is going to marry sport and diplomacy, to look at sport beyond the medals and the trophies. I want your thoughts about this move by the Nigerian government, focusing on that area of the world, of changing the world, using sport, or marrying sport and diplomacy.
When I heard about it from my friend Kun Lee, I was ecstatic because I know various people, including Kun Lee and probably yourself, have been aiming for this as an outcome for a long time. Having that department there will amplify the voices of athletes who want to be activists, and will amplify the voice of sport itself, and the role it can play to bring people together, to heal wounds, and also to bring about positive social change.
Fantastic. Well, we don't want to fight anybody in the world. All we are asking for is equality, we are asking for justice, we are asking for a level playing field, and all those things we can get in sports and through sports. Join us after the break.
NTE Sports 24, where sports thrive.
If you are just joining us, you have missed. This is the Sports Parliament, coming to you from Africa's largest television network. And we have Dr. Richard LAPCHICK talking to us about sports and society. It's been truly informative and educative today. Kule, you are there. Kantara, you have listened to your mentor, your teacher, your everything from Northeastern University in Boston. You want to add a word or two?
From him, from where that came from, the program will not cover it all. As you have mentioned, a mentor, a boss, there are other things you have done that have not been mentioned here that actually pertains to Africa. And I would like you to touch on that. Today you have the NBA in Africa. Many young people are benefiting from that, hundreds of them. NBA is bringing the league to Africa. I would like you to touch on the beginning of that, because it's very important, because that also speaks to the power of sport in bringing about change or helping impacting society positively.
So, Richard, the NBA in Africa, how tell us about it, the NBA coming to Africa.
At the time, sport in general, other sports, including the NBA, were trying to go global, but most of their efforts were being focused on Europe. I had been asked by then Nelson Mandela and the African National Congress to bring a program we had started in the United States called Project Teamwork, which taught conflict resolution skills and how to bring different racial groups together using a sports metaphor. It became very successful in the United States. President Clinton adopted it as his model for conflict resolution, and we were asked to bring it to South Africa. There was no basketball in South Africa at the time. The sports themselves were being played, cricket and rugby were being played basically by white people, and soccer was being played by basically black Africans. And I thought that the possibility of bringing basketball there could become the first integrated sport in South Africa. So I went to David Stern, the commissioner of the NBA, and Charlie Grantham, head of the Players Association, and asked them if they would support us going to Africa in 1992. There was a lot of conflict going on in South Africa at the time. People were still being killed. The ground war between Lacy and the ANC was running rampant, and it would have been risky for the NBA to go, but they agreed to go. So on this first trip were not only David Stern and Charlie Grantham, but Patrick Ewing, Dikembe Mutombo, and Alonzo Mourning were the three players. And Wes Unseld and Leonard Wilkins, two Hall of Fame coaches, were the coaches, and we went there, we met with people, did some clinics. There really weren't many basketball courts to do anything on, but the NBA helped to build new courts and refurbish some courts and make them into more basketball-like, as opposed to sports that I think were being played on the courts at that time. And the NBA fell in love with South Africa. So we went back the next year and had a bigger group with us. About 30 NBA people came, and they fell in love with it, and then they decided, so David Stern was invited along with myself to be at Nelson Mandela's inauguration on May 10th of 1994. Anybody who was there had their life changed that day to see what was possible. This man, who had been so hated in South Africa by white people, who had been a political prisoner for 27 years in the most racist system of government on the face of the earth in the second half of the 20th century, could suddenly become its president, then anything and everything was possible.
Wow.
So I think that people in South Africa knew that that sport metaphor was powerful. We knew in the United States, and the NBA knew that they had had some influence there. So they started in the year 2000 what's called Basketball Without Borders, which they now go back literally every year to South Africa. They opened an office in Johannesburg, as you and your fans in Nigeria know, started an African sports league. The first league started by an American professional sport outside of the United States. The fact that they chose Africa to do it in is a huge statement about Africa. And it's very exciting to see the potential. We see the benefits in the NBA itself of so many African players who went through the Basketball Without Borders program. I believe there were 38 African players on NBA rosters last year, the highest number ever. That's only going to increase in the years ahead. And they, of course, become ambassadors when they go back to their countries and try to bring the NBA there to use the NBA's resources to help develop not only the game, but sport itself and society in their home countries.
I would just say, Dr. Richard LAPCHICK, thank you very much. Onome, final words on Doctor and his work.
Doctor, your works are quite enormous, they're large. I studied it hard today when Mr. Speaker sent it to me. And I was about to ask the same question that you've just answered. I would like to thank you for your time. Thank you so much for all you do. I also want you to, in your last words in this segment, I would like you to please just briefly say what you think sports can be used for to unify Africa, especially beyond winning of medals and trophies. What do you think sports can be used for in unifying Africa?
Well, I think that the global community, as they see African athletes succeed, looks to Africa with an even brighter smile and the possibility of devoting more resources from other countries to the African continent. But I think much more importantly, it can bring pride to the people of Africa about their success on playing fields and know that that is replicated in the boardrooms and in other parts of our society, that the people of Africa are emerging as a huge force globally and are going to have a long-term influence on the world in the years ahead that they don't have yet. And I think that the sports example of success there will be yet one other example of how that success of Africa, whether it's in economics or natural resources or healthcare or whatever it happens to be in, is an important thing for the world, not just for Africa.
Dr. LAPCHICK, thank you very much. Africa needs sports. Africa needs people like you. Nigeria would definitely invite you very soon to a program where we are going to share your knowledge, your experiences, and you are going to be part of the compasses that will lead us into that change in the world. As I said, we are not going to fight. We want Africa to unite and to be one with the rest of the world. That is our dream. So on behalf of the sports parliamentarians, because I hear we have to discuss the loss of the Super Eagles tonight, let me use this opportunity once again to thank you very much, sir. Thank you for coming. You can just sit back and enjoy the rest of the evening because Nigerians are sad and disappointed with the loss of their team. But with you, you've cheered us up now. Thank you, Dr. Richard LAPCHICK. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
After the break.
It's the dawn of a new era on NTA's flagship program, the Sports Parliament, revitalized with lots of varieties, including feedback responses from viewers. Sports Parliament, the weekly sports show that exposes all the intrigues in the Nigerian sports sector and projects an agenda on the way forward for Nigerian sports. On NTA every Thursday at 10:30 p.m., running for 1 whole hour, discussing sports. The parliamentarians are more committed than ever to enlighten the viewers as the Sports Parliament takes it to a whole new level on the floor of the House. Keep a date with the Sports Parliament as motions are moved every Thursday on the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, with his gavel to harmonize sports resolutions. The House have it.
Yes, the eyes have it tonight because we are going to discuss what Onome says he does not want to discuss. So let me start from Adenike, not from you. Adenike, for me, I'm speechless. I'm speechless. I have nothing to say about today's match. I watched it all. Nothing to say. Adenike, over to you.
Mr. Speaker, I just want to be the lights at the end of the tunnel. I want to smile against all odds, even though it hurts so bad. A lot of us have thought that this was going to be a walkover, but then I've been reading through most of the platforms on today, and I see the sadness. I share the pain with a lot of Nigerians. It is unprecedented. It is a record that has been broken of, loss in Nigeria. Many of us are blaming the coach. Some are blaming, but I just think that it is fundamental. It is something that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we will sink further than this. This is disgraceful. It is pathetic. But then again, as a Nigerian that I am, I choose to smile, hoping that someday, somewhere, somebody does the right thing, and we get to put the right people where they ought to be, and hopefully we'll see the change that we're so praying for.
Adenike,
it is sad, Mr. Speaker.
Let me put
what came up today.
Yes. I want to put it this way so that people will understand my own position.
Let's go, Mr. Speaker.
Let me put it this way.
Let the second service commence.
No. See, the point is, Central African Republic, in those days, European countries never used to play African countries in friendly matches. They won't play you because they would say,
"We're not up to par.
Your standard was too low." And even if you wanted to play first division club, second division, they will not play you. An African team, having a friendly game with a European club is not possible.
Unheard of.
They just never did. Until a certain year when Nigeria came up, Cameroon came up, and then the thing changed, and England actually played Nigeria.
Yeah.
But it took decades. You see, the way we were to Europe at that time was the way Central African Republic was to the rest of Africa. Go and check the record. Nigeria has never played Central African Republic. The first international match I played was against Central African Republic. It was in 1973 when they assembled us as Western State National Sports Festival team. We were assembled Western State National Sports Festival team, and we wanted to play a friendly match. A country in Africa that was so weak for us to play, they brought Central African Republic. We played them at Liberty Stadium. 4-0 we beat them. I scored my first goal, international goal, during that match. Just to tell you the gap between Nigeria and Central African Republic. Almost 50 years after, that gap between us has not been bridged. So there is no, where do you hear Central African Republic against? There's no reason, there's no excuse. Forget about minors or no minors. There's no excuse for the defeat we suffered today. Anyway, over to you.
First and foremost, I will blame the dollar for this defeat, because the dollar is going up. We had to lose. Second of all, my eyes still pepper me. General, thank you. I was ashamed. Mr. Speaker, you saw me when I came to the studio this evening with my Nigerian jersey. I had to take it off because I was embarrassed. I took 10 of my friends to the stadium today to watch us play. Some have never watched Nigeria play live before. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was so clear that we're very, very slow. I don't want to use certain words on national TV because I've been spoken to by a lot of people to take it easy tonight. I was bruised and battered. The first thing that hurts me is the fact that Central African Republic is like when you say you want to run a marathon against a Kenyan. The Kenyans will laugh. From Nigeria, you will lose. It's walkover. That was what we thought. We got to the stadium. Nobody had a clue who these people, their jersey was as if they got it at Ojo Elegba. And the next thing, we knew we were in trouble when in the first 45 minutes, no shot on target from the Super Eagles. I am sure Kelechi's weekly allowance will take care of that entire team from Central African Republic. And then the game began to make us so sad that someone sitting close to me said that, bros, 80 minutes, no action, no happen when make us even do, hey, and we started laughing. 88th minute, nothing like that. The only chance that came in that game came to the team from Central African Republic. And lo and behold, in the 91st minute, they scored us. Mr. Speaker, Central African Republic is rated 124th in the world of football. 124th. As at 16th of September this year. The last time Central African Republic won a match, Google it, it does not come out. It was today. The last time they won a match was today. Google it if you are home. It is a national disgrace and embarrassment. And it brings me to what happened in the 70s when a team from Zaire was meant to win the then African Championship. And they lost in the finals, and the president took them and lashed them, flogged them thoroughly. This team is an embarrassment. You would not believe that the players that played for Nigeria actually play professional football in premiership teams. It's unbelievable. I want to say this, Mr. Speaker, so that people would understand the anger. We are 200 million people, if not more than enough, in Nigeria. You select these 23 people to come represent us to go play a match against Central African Republic. They are put in the most comfortable hotel in Lagos State. They get everything they want, bespoke, first class. And then you send our military might to protect them, to escort them from their hotel to the stadium. 23 of them in a bus, a single bus. The entire hope of a nation of over 200 people is on your shoulders. They get to the stadium in pomp and pageantry. They come out from that bus, they warm up. We stand to sing the national anthem. Today, Mr. Speaker, people stood up. I sang, I stood. And then you play that rubbish? If you don't go to Douala on Sunday to beat this same team 3-0, there'll be problem. Huge problem. I will use all I have to attack this Super Eagles team, and I will make sure, with the last blood I have in my body, that each player there is disgraced. This is an embarrassment to this country, Mr. Speaker.
No. At the end of the day, it is a game. It is a game.
It's an embarrassment, Mr. Speaker.
No. It's an embarrassment. Yeah, it's an embarrassment. But
national embarrassment.
But we won't. Yeah, when you say you attack, don't, because people will misunderstand you.
Oh, what I meant by attack is that they are not good enough to play for the national team.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
they should go elsewhere if they cannot beat Central African. There was no pattern whatsoever. Nothing to show.
But when you pay somebody $45,000 every month,
he was busy clapping.
No, and so what time does he have to coach? Who is he coaching? Where is he coaching? Who is he coaching? Where is he coaching? Where would they learn how to play or what to play? Where? Tell me now.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, the coach that coached the Central African Republic team, this was his first game. But those of us in the stadium could see that they had a strategy. At no time was their 5-man defense breached.
Yeah.
No time. They were always compact.
Yeah.
You could see a team that was being coached. Joseph Yobo was there. You have played this football to the highest level. Nothing to show.
Even though it was a bush team, they were being coached.
You now took out, you were having problems in the midfield. You took out your midfielder, Aribo, and brought in Ahmed Musa to play 10. Ahmed Musa played junior cadre football for Nigeria. He has never played 10. You now bring him now to play 10 in this kind of game? What kind of tactics is that? Then the only player that could hold the ball, that could caress the ball, that could dribble, that could make great passes, you put him out on the left side. I mean, what was he doing there? He should have been in the middle playing. Everybody in the stadium could see that. You didn't move him in there. Okay. It was just a tactical, technical lapse. This was a disgrace, an eyesore. An eyesore.
Well, I think let's start to wrap up now. Kunle, do you want to say anything, or do we just go to Adenike to help us wrap up for the night?
I align with both of them.
Okay, final words from Adenike. What's your verdict? Your verdict. So what do we do now on the sports parliament? On the sports parliament, what do we do?
Our usual language, the common phrases, we go back to the drawing board and then do the right thing. This is disgraceful. We are hopeful that things are done better.
Onome, final words from you before you move some motion. Let's hear now.
Mr. Speaker,
on Sunday we have a game, Abi?
Yes. Okay. The team leaves on Saturday. Mandating this team, the Super Eagles, to go redeem yourselves. Put what has happened tonight behind you. Show this team from Central African Republic in Cameroon. They don't even have
Nigerian spirit.
Yes, the Nigerian spirit. They don't even have their own stadium. It is they cannot produce a stadium for you to play them at their own country. You are going to play in Cameroon. Show them that you are Super Eagles. Show them that you play in the Premiership. You play in the Russian League. You play in the French League. Show them that you are better than them. Do not go and play like they gathered you guys at Mushin, gathered you people to just come today and just try and do something. No. Please, go and redeem the image of yourselves and this great nation. Go and make us proud on Sunday. Beat this team convincingly and make sure that when we watch that game, our eyes not go pepper us like today on. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Well, on that note, all those in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Wow, the thing is resounding all over Nigeria. All over Nigeria. All those against say nay. There's not a single nay in Nigeria. The ayes have it.